Hello, my friends. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about the individual versus collective dichotomy that a lot of people like to draw. And I'm going to be responding specifically to a video made by Semiogogue, who has been pushing individualism lately in opposition to National Socialism. And there are a lot of things that I do agree with him on, such as I think that an emphasis on liberty, individual liberty, is paramount in the European soul. I think that liberty, in the sense of the Greek sense of freedom, that not that you could just do whatever you want, not that you could just be decadent and debaucherous and do a whole bunch of vicious things, but that you are free in the sense that you have no master telling you what to do, and that you're able to fend for yourself, that you're able to take care of your own home and your own family and your own land, and that your presence and your influence in the tribe as a whole is centered in who you really are, and that you're representing who you really are as part of the tribe. And so I think that that's a strong part of the European soul, is this desire not to be somebody's slave, to be able to take care of yourself, to be able to take care of your own house and your own family, and to be the lord of your own land, even as you are a part of a greater tribe. That's I think, something I agree with Semiogogue with, if that's sort of the direction he's going. But it seems like he's taking it a little step too far in this whole individualism versus collectivism thing, because I don't think that there's a real dichotomy here. Semiogogue defines individual like many other people define it. He defines an individual as the ultimate exception to all general rules, the ultimate X factor, he called it, the thing which cannot be placed into a category. But that's not an identity. The word individual implies that there were divisions that occurred which led up to the point of the individual, of the undividable thing. So an individual is always an individual of something. When you say, I have an individual, it begs the question, necessarily, an individual of what? It's pretty obvious, I think. Because individual cannot be an identity. I said that before, but the reason is that an identity is a concept. And a concept is always a relation between things. If you were truly an individual, if you were truly the only thing that existed, let's say, and you had nothing to relate to, nothing to contextualize you, put you into some kind of proper context so that you can relate to the world, relate to other things, to relate to other people. If you had nothing to relate to, nothing to interact with, then you would have no identity. An identity is determined by the way that you relate to other things. And this is just as true with humans as it is with anything else. If you take just an atom, which is an individual, and you assume that the atom has no proper context, that the atom is not identified by the way that it relates with other atoms, or the way that it forms molecules, and the way that those molecules form larger substances, and you're just looking at the atom, you're not going to get much meaningful information from it. You're not going to be able to identify it meaningfully unless you are able to place it in relation to other atoms. So it's the same thing with human beings. A human being has no identity. It cannot be identified meaningfully without relating it to other humans, without showing how it relates to other humans. And those other relations are things like family, things like the larger family clan or family groups. Everyone has like family friends and groups of families that they know are connected with their families in certain ways. Then you have the town or the village as a whole, and then the ethnic group as a whole, and then you have the racial group as a whole. And each of these categories can be divided up meaningfully. So the race is divided up into ethnic groups. The ethnic groups are divided up into local groups. The local groups are divided up into family groups. The family groups are divided up into individual families. And then the families are divided up into individual members. And from each of these categories, you derive a certain set of characteristics or a certain set of relationships which give characteristics to you. Without these relations, you would have no characteristics. You would have no relationships. You would have no way to identify yourself. And this is one of the reasons why I love Tolkien so much as a writer, because, and see, look, hold on, see this cigarette? I'm not throwing it out. I'm popping out the ember here, and I'm not littering, see? This is now going into my cup holder, and I will throw it away when I get home. I've gotten so much shit for throwing out cigarette butts out the window, which is deserved. It is deserved. But just so everybody knows, I'm not doing it anymore. You guys got me. I learned. It is good that I really shouldn't do that. But anyway, this is why I love Tolkien so much, because he understands that the individual identity is derived from these larger categorical structures. So, like when Gandalf is trying to get Bilbo to go on his adventure, he appeals to the fact that Bilbo is a Took, and that because of his Took blood, he should be adventurous, he should be bold, and that inspires Bilbo to act. And I think he does the same thing to Frodo, where he says, "You're a Took. This is who you are." And so being a Took is laid on top of being a hobbit from the Shire, is laid on top of being a hobbit in general, is laid on top of being a humanoid. And each of these layers serves to inform and contextualize and provide the relationships which form the basis of one's identity. And if we treat the whole world as nothing but individuals that aren't identified by their relationships to each other, then we're treating the whole world as just random atoms that really don't have any identity, that are just interchangeable and random and X factors, like Semiogogue said. And there's no grounding, there's no real foundation to identify a thing without the way it relates to other people. And so these sorts of relationships are important, because these are the sorts of relationships that are possible. So you could say something like, oh, but as an individual, you could just relate to other individuals and therefore derive your characteristics from your one-to-one reaction or one-to-one interactions with other individuals and how you act in relationship to other individuals as the individual. But, that's true, and a lot of our characteristics come from that. They do. Which is why, someone like You can still be a part of an ethnic group and of a local group and of a family group, and then have some characteristic that sort of breaks the mold a little bit. You can be, say, like Bilbo. You could be a part of a family that, for the most part, is timid and not adventurous, but then you can take all of that and then become something new as well. And in becoming something new, saying you're from a timid family but you show some bravery, that doesn't erase everything about your context. It doesn't erase everything about the way that you relate to people as a whole, but it shows that an individual can introduce new relationships, but it still is a member of these relationships. And also, say you want to go just by an individual perspective, and I'm just going to identify myself by how I act in relation to other individuals. That's fine, but you have to recognize that you're missing out on a certain possibility, which is that it is possible to embed yourself and identify yourself by these eternal relations, essentially: the family, the ethnic group, the racial group, the local group, whatever. These are possible relationships which can inform your identity. And to just categorically reject that and say, no, I'm not going to use those relations to inform my identity, I'm just going to relate as an individual, you are basically limiting yourself for no reason. Why? I mean, unless your local ethnic or racial groups are like oppressive and you really don't like them, then I could understand. If you have this weird association with your ethnic or social group that it's oppressive and that you don't want to be a part of it, then fine. But you have to recognize that you're rejecting something. You're not like recognizing some eternal truth that everybody's an individual. You're just rejecting a possible relationship. You're rejecting a possible way that people can interact. So it's like looking at the atom. You can look at how just an individual atom will interact with other atoms, but you're missing out on how a molecule made up with that sort of atom will act. You're missing out on how the macro structures will interact, which is different from how just an individual atom can act. There are possible relationships that can only occur at these higher macro levels. And to reject those relations as meaningful is to reject the higher level concepts that come along with them. So, yeah, you can study just an atom and see how it just interacts, and you could study just an individual and see how just they interact. But you'd be ignoring the possibility that the individual can meaningfully be a part of a larger group, and that the larger group will take on qualities which are different and above, like an emergent complexity, than just the individual. And personally, I like to feel like I'm part of a family. I like to feel like I'm part of a local or tribal group and an ethnic group, because I am, and I like to recognize how that provides a meaningful relationship, and that within that relationship, within that greater structure, which can be formed with other people, new possibilities arise. And to consider yourself just an individual and to reject that possibility, it's not recognizing some philosophical truth. You're just rejecting a possibility. You're just rejecting membership of a group that you are a part of. It's like an iron atom saying, I'm not going to be a part of those magnets. I'm an individual. But iron atoms working together can form a magnet, which is a new and larger phenomenon that an individual iron atom cannot accomplish on its own. So there are things that can be accomplished only when individuals recognize their group relationships and then act out those group relationships. So that's about all I have to say about that. An individual is not a meaningful identity. It says nothing about you. The only thing you can really say about an individual is like that it has shape. You're not saying anything about how it meaningfully relates with other things, and that's where the meaning comes in. Meaning, and you've said this, Semiogogue, I'm talking to you directly, you said this in a video, that context provides meaning, that words are basically defined and identified. The meaning of a word is identified by the context that it's used in. Without context, you can't really tell what a word means. And it's the same thing with humans. Without being able to contextualize a human by their relationships, by these larger structures which can be formed by humans, then you are missing out on what the thing really is, what the character of the thing is, how to identify it. And in doing so, you're missing out on the potential accomplishments that can be made only by these larger groupings, which are meaningful, which can occur. So, that went on a little bit long, but thank you for watching. I hope that this video was meaningful for you.